on, or do I think, what else can I do, or what else do I need to change? So for some people it's not changing anything, it's just persisting. I think I said the first week that the research suggests that for sustainable long-term weight loss, it's 1 kilo a month. Now most people feel nauseous when I say that because they want 4 kilos tomorrow or tomorrow. Now when you actually plot someone's weight, you may lose a kilo a week, but within about 6 months, for example, you might start to lose a half a kilo a month or whatever. But so if you look at the average, you're probably estimating about a kilo a month. That's if you're doing it the right way, the sensible way. We know if you lose more than about a kilo a week, you're going to be losing fluid, and it's something that you can't sustain. Okay, so that's why I've put together this form about the weight loss plateau, just for you to be a detective in your own life and think, am I doing really well? Is it a matter of just persisting? The tortoise always wins in the end, so the tortoise route and the hare route suggests that hare route, fast results, can you sustain it? Tortoise, the trade-off is you may not see results on the scales, but what is a measure of success? So what else is successful? Is it I'm still attending Gary's classes? Is it I'm fitter? Is it I've got better sleep? Is it I've got irritable bowel and it's actually improving? Is it I've got better mood? Is it I'm eating healthier foods and therefore being a role model for the family? So I want you to think about what is a measure of success. Because to be honest, the two measures of success I see all the time in the media is how much money you've got and how much weight you've lost. That's what I'm going to say about that.
What are your thoughts with the weight loss when, if you do get to that plateau, shocking your system again? Because if you keep doing the same thing, and then maybe altering something, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. So sometimes if you can get in the same sort of regime with eating and exercise, it's good to sort of chop and change it.
Yeah, because your body gets used to the same.
It does. Your body starts to get, and your metabolism starts to get into a bit of a pattern, so to speak. So yeah, you could actually chop and change it, not only just to change it for your body, but also for boredom's sake as well. Definitely. So that's something to think about. Even with resistance training, for some people it's, I'm doing a bit of cardio, maybe I need to add in some resistance training. I've also got other things as well. So you might find that you're doing well, you've just got to persist, but I've put other things like maybe keeping a food diary. The research suggests that if people keep a food diary, it can actually help you identify what's going on. And we're going to talk about patterns today, so what's happening in your eating. I call it calorie amnesia. So sometimes you don't remember what you've been eating by the end of the day, so every little bit counts in terms of what you put in your mouth. But also think in a positive way, every little bit counts in terms of what you're doing to help you increase fitness or lose weight. So even if it's just one good day of eating, it all adds up. So think of it in both ways. I've also put, are you getting enough calories? And we talked about this last week, the metabolism. Think back to a car. You don't put enough petrol in the car, it's not going to go. Quality of petrol too. I've got a diesel, put diesel petrol in my car, so diesel goes really well and longer. So are you putting the right fuel in your car in terms of low GI food? So always think about, am I eating enough? Now the things that also can look more on the scales, this is the hard thing, when you get on the scales, it tells you a number. Other than fat gain, what else will actually affect the scales? So think about fluid. Have you gained fluid? Things that can increase fluid retention. It's great being female, so ladies, monthly period, you can gain a couple of kilos. Not 10, maybe about 1 to 2. It also can be alcohol. I've had many people who may have gone out at night, had a couple of drinks, the next day they get on the scales and it looks more. So what you have to do is get back to your eating plan. Within a day or so, it might go back to normal. The same with the salty meal. Salt retains fluid. So what can happen though, there are two ways of doing this. You might have had a salty meal or had a bit too much alcohol. Remember we talked about mindset. You can think, all right, I had a really good time on Saturday night, get back on track. Or what's another way of interpreting that in a not so good way? What else would you say to yourself rather than going, oh well, I've blown it. Yeah, so sometimes it's not the one meal that may potentially increase weight, it's your interpretation of that one meal, and then you go, I've blown it, and then the patterns start to sort of go out of whack. So just start to think about, with this, start to reflect. It's been 4 weeks and think, how have I been going? Do I need to fine tune anything? In terms of muscle mass, if your clothes are getting bigger, and you're getting fitter, but the scales aren't changing, what is that telling you?
It's muscle.
It's muscle. You're getting leaner. Muscle burns more calories than fat. Isn't that great? And unfortunately, as we get older, we lose muscle mass. We start to get a bit more wrinkly, and everything tends to go down that way in terms of skin folds. Yeah, gravity sort of sets in. So what we're trying to do, this is with the elderly. They've actually got programs where they're getting the elderly to start to do resistance training. Gary would be so proud if you walked into some of the nursing homes, getting people to retain their muscle mass. So think about fitness rather than fatness. Right? So that's just... because I get really frustrated when I see that people are looking great and they're doing really well, but in their head they're saying it's not enough. So just don't be your worst enemy. Does that make sense? So that's all I'm going to say about that. Any questions before we start? Because I'm just going to have a brief chat to you about emotional eating. Because we're human beings and aren't robots, we've all got thoughts and feelings, and quite often they can affect our best of intentions, whether it's to do with food or whether it's decisions at work or decisions as a parent. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But are there any questions about what I've just said or anything that you'd like me to mention in relation to emotional eating? I have no magic pills, so that's one thing you can't ask. Or are you still trying to wake up, the caffeine hasn't kicked in?
Like I find the times that I've tried to lose weight, that I'll lose it.
Yep.
But then it's like my mindset. I feel like I'll get to a certain point, but it's like my body.
Yep.
Is not. My mind isn't used to the new body.
The new change.
And then it wants to go back to what I've always been used to. So if I'm trying to go from size 12 to size 10,
yep.
I've been size 12 for so many years, and it's like...
your mind's...
Yeah. Can that happen?
Absolutely. So it's all... Remember we talked about one of those sessions was your mindset. So while your body is changing and you're making behavioural changes, have you fine-tuned your mindset? Chances are no. This can be one of the things that makes or breaks is, oh, well, I've lost the weight, no problem, or accepting the fact that you have made a change. So yeah, changing the way you think and practicing it as much as you practice how you're doing punches in boxing or practicing how to eat differently. Time and time again, I've said this before, that yeah, we need to really rewire how we think. It's one of the most underestimated barriers that can really undermine our attempts at change. So I'm going to go through mindset again because it's a really good point. What I want you to think about is if you've been successful in the past, whether it's about your fitness or weight or whatever your goal is, I want you to start to think about at what point in time do I go off track? Is it when I get to a certain point I think I've done really well and you go backwards? Or is it when you stop seeing results? Or is it when you're not aware and you go on a holiday and there's a trigger? So are people kind of aware of where they get to and then they go that way? Potentially. So it's usually your decision. So it's what you're saying to yourself, and what you need to do is to anticipate those lapses, anticipate what's going to come up and beat yourself to it kind of thing. Does that make sense? So when we go through it now, what I've done with this form is to keep I've put some lines after every tip for you to think about, does this apply to me? Because as I said before in groups, it's really hard because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So what I've put are some tips to actually help with emotional eating. And as we go through, I want you just to think about, does that apply to me and what would my strategy be? Because different things work for different people. So the first